Уважаемые участники Восточного экономического форума, просим вас занять свои места, отключить мобильные телефоны и вспышки фотокамер. Пленарное заседание начинается. Dear participants of the Eastern Economic Forum, you are kindly requested to take your seats, switch off your mobile phones, and disable the flash on your cameras. The plenary session is starting now. Уважаемые участники Восточного экономического форума, просим вас занять свои места, отключить мобильные телефоны и вспышки фотокамер. Пленарное заседание начинается. Dear participants of the Eastern Economic Forum, you are kindly requested to take your seats, switch off your mobile phones, and disable the flash on your cameras. The plenary session is starting now. Уважаемые участники Восточного экономического форума, просим вас занять свои места, отключить мобильные телефоны и вспышки фотокамер. Пленарное заседание начинается. Dear participants of the Eastern Economic Forum, you are kindly requested to take your seats, switch off your mobile phones, and disable the flash on your cameras. The plenary session is starting now.
Какое будущее?
What kind of future awaits Russia and the Russian Far East? The answer to this question is here. Russia is going to be part of a multipolar world, a rich and high-tech country. In the Russian Far East and in the Arctic, the government has set up unique conditions for developing businesses, a ready-made infrastructure, provision of land, and also possibilities of using foreign workers without quotas, as well as permanent conditions when infrastructure projects are being implemented. going through the region are the most important transport corridors that bring together the greater Eurasian space. The Russian Far East is Russia's gateway to the Asia-Pacific as well as for the participants of the BRICS Association. Together, we're searching for common ways of cooperation in an unstable world because we understand that world trade is a tool for development rather than pressure. Russia is open to cooperation and it turns towards the world community. Reviving the Kamchatka Geopark population and other environmental projects bring thousands of people together from dozens of countries. International advanced development territories in the Russian Far East turn into a driver for convenient industrial cooperation, digitalization, bridges distances, and helps raise the efficiency of whole industries. Cutting-edge discoveries of the Far Eastern scientists and companies are an important contribution to Russia's technological sovereignty. This region is becoming increasingly comfortable for life, and the most important treasure of the region is people who are the true heroes of our times. Using modern technologies and counting upon their land, they turn this place into a region for infinite opportunities and Russia's power pole. The Russian Far East 2030, bringing efforts together for creating new opportunities.
President
Vladimir Putin of the Russian Federation. Prime Minister Anwar Ibrahim of Malaysia. Vice President Han Zheng of the People's Republic of China. Moderator of the plenary session, Alexandra Suvorova. Good afternoon. I'm glad to welcome you to the plenary session of the Eastern Economic Forum. This year, the theme of the forum is the Far East 2030, joining efforts together for creating new opportunities. Mr. President, for many times now you've said that the 21st century's priority is the development of the Russian Far East, what has been done, what is yet to be done, how is Russia building its relations to the countries of the region. We'll search for the answers to these questions together, but before that, as is tradition, I would like to invite you to the podium, Mr. President. Over to you. distinguished Prime Minister Anwar Ibrahim, distinguished Vice President Han Zheng, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to welcome all the participants and the guests of the 9th Eastern Economic Forum. Russia and Vladivostok, in particular, as a tradition, hosts business people, technical and scientific teams, CEOs of leading companies and officials in the early September. Those experts and entrepreneurs who show interest in the Russian Far East, as well as interest in the infinite opportunities this unique part of our country is opening up for creation and for mutually beneficial partnership. As we know, the development of the Russian Far East has been defined as our national priority for the whole 21st century, as our moderator has just pointed out. And life itself has confirmed the aptness and the importance of this decision. The challenges we are facing recently, as well as the trends we are witnessing in the world economy, all of that is testimony to the aptness of our decision. We see that business ties, trade routes, and vectors of development are reorientating towards the east and to the global south. And our Far Eastern regions provide us with a direct gateway to these promising and developing markets. They allow us to overcome the barriers some Western elites are trying to impose upon the whole world. And what's most important, the Russian Far East is a great space which helps realize your entrepreneurial initiative and launch projects, build new industries. The Far East, without exaggeration, is right now the most important factor for reinforcing Russia's positions in the world. It's the flagship of Russia in the global economic reality, and our future, to a large extent, will be dependent upon how fast the Russian Far East is developing. And this theme brings together around 100 events, panel sessions, and roundtables taking place as part of the Eastern Economic Forum. The forum brings together representatives of more than 75 countries and territories. These discussions are accompanied by substantial business dialogue. They result in concrete investment solutions and trade agreements. Just during the last 3 forums, more than 1,000 agreements have been signed to the tune of more than 10.5 trillion rubles. The Eastern Economic Forum has turned into a well-recognized platform for creating business ties and for discussing strategic issues related to the development of the Russian Far East and the Asia-Pacific as a whole. During my speech, in my remarks, I'm going to talk about some concrete steps towards this goal. I'll talk about our proposals to foreign partners in terms of reinforcing investment, trade, production and technological cooperation in the Asia-Pacific. I'm also going to talk about the results as well as the plans we've got in economy, in infrastructure and in the social sphere in the Russian Far East. I'll talk about raising the standards of living for the citizens of Russia living here. I'd like to remind you that starting from 2013, we've got a new strategic partnership as well as a comprehensive development strategy for the Russian Far East. This approach has turned out to be efficient over the last 10 years. We have either launched or are planning to launch more than 3,500 industrial, infrastructural and technological as well as educational projects. We see that the investment in the Russian Far East is growing 3 times over the last 10 years. It's 3 times as high as the average across Russia. And we see the outcome of this investment. We've got around 1,000 new enterprises, 140,000 new jobs. The industrial output dynamics in the region is 25% higher than on average across Russia since 2013. We've got 16 advanced development territories, and the free port of Vladivostok special preferential regime has been set up in the Kuril Islands, as well as a special administrative district on Ruski Island, which is hosting this forum. Incidentally, This district has allowed us to get assets back to Russia from offshores and from foreign jurisdictions to the tune of more than 5.5 trillion rubles. More than 100 companies are currently residing in this district, and we are going to move forward and forge ahead, improving the business climate in Russia and in the Russian Far East in particular. We're going to stick to new, more efficient approaches to cooperating with our foreign investors here. During the last Eastern Economic Forum, we announced the establishment of international advanced development territories in the Russian Far East. They should provide globally competitive conditions for foreign investors, especially from foreign friendly countries. The first international advanced development territory is scheduled to be set up here in Primorsky region. Our Chinese partners are showing a great deal of interest in that, as well as the Republic of Belarus, which can participate in building a new deep-water port here in Primorsky district. And I would like to ask the Russian State Duma and the government to accelerate their work on the draft law which is required for setting up such advanced development territories. Another factor is another regulatory decision we are about to make. Starting from September the 1st this year, our legislation stipulates the possibility of using foreign standards in design and construction. Of course, I'm referring to the standards of those countries where the resilience and security requirements for construction works are at least at the same level as ours, or stricter. I do hope this approach is going to be implemented here, in particular in the advanced development territories in the Russian Far East. Another important testimony to cooperation with foreign partners is the development of Bolshoy Ussuriysky Island in Khabarovsk region. We intend to build big logistics companies here, border checkpoints, build new roads. In May this year, during my state visit to the People's Republic of China, our Chinese counterparts and we have agreed to work jointly on this project. This will give a powerful impetus to the development of Khabarovsk and the region as a whole. I would like to ask the government to work through all the organizational and financial matters to start implementing this plan starting from next year, 2025. Of course, one of the key issues for launching initiatives in manufacturing, in residential construction and development, and in upgrading the transportation network, we need to have in mind the supply of energy. The electricity consumption in the Russian Far East is growing. Right now it stands at 69 billion kilowatt hours per annum. By the end of the decade, it's going to rise to 96 billion, and some settlements and districts and big investors are running into shortages of electricity, which puts a constraint on the construction of new residential areas and industrial facilities and infrastructure. I've already instructed the government to work with our big energy companies and business circles to draft a long-term program for developing the energy capacities in the Russian Far East, and we need to provide the tools for project funding. And through this program, we need to remove any shortages we anticipate in electricity supply in the Russian Far East. First and foremost, through commissioning new electricity facilities such as Nizhny hydropower plant in our Amursk region. It'll provide energy to the region and to the eastern polygon of the Trans-Siberian Railroad. It'll help protect the territories against freshets. And I would also like the government to think about building NPPs in the Russian Far East. We spoke about that yesterday. And this plan should take into account both the current needs as well as the needs we anticipate in future among the business and our citizens. And of course, it should take into account the long-term goals. And it should also reinforce the transportation and logistical capacities of the Russian Far East. The most important project in that regard is the expansion of the Eastern Polygon. Over the last 10 years, both in the Trans-Siberian Road and Baikal-Amur mainland, we have laid more than 2,000 and have upgraded more than 5,000 kilometers. either building or rebuilding more than 100 bridges and tunnels through Lena, Bureya, Selinga rivers. By the end of this year, the throughput capacity will have risen to 180 million tons. This year, we have opened a new third stage for the development of this transport network. We have already started doing that. We need to remove the bottlenecks, commission more than 300 facilities, such as the relief roads for Severomoysky, Kuznetsovsky, Kodarsky tunnel, as well as the bridge over the Amur River. But of course, this is even a more large-scale task because we need to create a second main track along the length of all of the Baikal-Amur mainland. We need to create 2 tracks for the Baikal-Amur mainland, and we have to electrify it along all of its length. In the next 8 years, we need to lay 3,100 kilometers of the railroads. Just to draw a comparison, it's the same length that was laid when the Baikal-Amur mainland and the Trans-Siberian Road were built, and the same as was laid when the Baikal-Amur mainland was being constructed from 1974 to 1984. So currently we are building a project which, in terms of its scale, is bigger than the biggest infrastructural project of the USSR, which used to be built by all the republics of the USSR, and their forces were very strained back then. So like the Trans-Siberian Road, we need to build a new road transport corridor from St. Petersburg to Vladivostok. And I'm not just talking about increasing the throughput capacity and improving the quality, because it'll also give an impetus to internal and domestic tourism, because this road is going to go through dozens of Russian regions. There are several stages. Last December, a new road was built between Moscow and Kazan. By the end of the year, it will have stretched to Yekaterinburg and then onwards to Tyumen. There are going to be built bypasses for Omsk, Novosibirsk, Kemerovo, and Kansk. Further on, once the road has reached Vladivostok, this corridor will have stretched by more than 10,000 kilometers, including connections to border checkpoints with other countries. I'd like to remind you about the instruction I gave in my address to the Federal Assembly, namely to decrease the queues at the border and decrease the time for inspection of freight transport. It should be no longer than 10 minutes. In the railroad checkpoints, we have already reached a very good rate in terms of the time needed for inspection. In the Eastern Polygon and in other roads, railroads and roads, we have already started large-scale works, engaging professionals, engineers, designers across different regions of country. And through their dedication, they show that Russia is willing and can build fast and at a high quality, implementing infrastructural and transport projects of a national and global scale. I refer in particular to the Northern Sea route as an international logistics route. Over the last 10 years, the cargo throughput has increased by whole magnitude. Back in 2014, the cargo throughput stood at 4 million tons, whereas last year it rose to 36 million, which is 5 times the record registered during the Soviet times. We are going to improve the throughput capacity, in particular through exploring the Arctic mineral deposits, reorienting the cargo, and increasing the transit. We have a big plan for developing the Northern Sea route, building icebreakers, increasing our satellite constellation, improving the coastal infrastructure, building emergency and rescue centers to pilot these logistical routes. 2 years ago, we launched coastal voyages along the Northern Sea route. Right now, this voyage includes 14 ports in the Russian Northeast, the Arctic, and the Russian Far East. Last year, the capacity of the Russian ports in the Northern Sea route exceeded 40 million tons. This is but the beginning. We're going to increase these capacities further, modernizing the transshipment capacities, expanding the close and far-distance railroad connections, which will allow us to increase the capacity of the Murmansk transport hub to 100 million tons, and then even higher than that. Our Eurasian integration partners are interested in developing Murmansk as a transportation hub. Our colleagues in Belarus are contemplating the development of port infrastructure and building their own terminals on the Kola Peninsula, and would like to invite other countries to participate in this project. And I think, and I see there is an interest there. All large-scale transportation and logistics initiatives Russia is pursuing are built using cutting-edge engineering, digital and environmental solutions, which creates an additional demand for the products produced by Russian machine builders and metal companies. It also creates a demand for the services provided by science and high-tech businesses based on cutting-edge approaches, taking into account the new level of quality of technological, economic, and educational capacities of the country. We need to pursue the strategic task of developing the Russian Far East. In particular, we need to further explore the subsoil resources of the Russian Far East, because currently all of Russian tungsten and tin, fluorite, as well as boron-containing ores are produced in the Russian Far East. It accounts for 80% of all of Russian diamonds and uranium, more than 70% of silver, and 60% of Russian gold. There are other key centers for production of these resources in Yakutia and Chukotka. There, the deposits have been explored for quite some time, and their capacities are limited, whereas the demand is constantly growing. So we need to ensure both the export and the domestic market. We need to ensure this resource sovereignty of the country. We need to provide uninterrupted supply of commodities and raw materials for our economy, for our settlements, providing them with fuel and commodities. We need to use most efficient Russian technologies and scientific discoveries in environment and management of natural resources. When I spoke here at the forum last year, I instructed the government to draft specific programs for surveying the mineral resources of the Russian Far East and Siberia. They should be part of the federal project, Geology, Reviving the Legend. These programs are ready. We estimate that 1 ruble of government expenditure is going to attract 10 rubles of private investors, and this money is going to be paid back, and the profits are going to be great. There's going to be comprehensive effect, but we need to do that timely, understanding the timing of the investment. So I'd like to ask the government to provide the necessary funds in the federal budget for the next triennium at a level which is adequate for the goals we are pursuing, because we need to improve the geological surveying of the Russian Far East by several times. I talk about titanium, lithium, niobium, and rare earths, which are requisite for the economy of the future. We have all of those resources available. The potential of these industries will improve the attractiveness of the regions, create new jobs, improve connectivity and logistics. The potential is great. Will help create cutting-edge creative industries in the Russian Far East, help build the infrastructure for the big data economy and AI, for piloting UAVs for commercial purposes and civilian purposes, in order to tap the technological progress potential, we will continue to improve the scientific and educational potential of the Russian Far East. This region has already launched the construction of university campuses in Yuzhno-Sakhalinsk and in Khabarovsk, but that is not sufficient for the Russian Far East. I suggest we should embark upon several new projects, such as university campuses in Ulan-Ude, Petropavlovsk-Kamchatsky, and Chita, and new batch of construction is going to be implemented here for the Russian Far Eastern Federal University in Vladivostok. It'll have all the conditions for youth entrepreneurship and business incubators. We'll also develop universities in the Arctic. Apart from Archangel campus, we'll build a similar project in Murmansk. Also, on the basis of these campuses, we will launch cutting-edge engineering schools. 2 such schools in Sakhalin and Vladivostok have already been set up. They're meant not just to train specialists for industry and agriculture, transport and social sphere, and for the AI. They're also meant to come up with original innovative solutions for scaling new solutions in social sphere and management and in economy. Russky Island has been hosting the Scientific and Technical Center of Rushydro for the last 2 years and specializes in innovative solutions in global energy, which are used for the technological upgrade of the energy sector in the Russian Far East. Our leading companies will also help build a big innovative technological hub on Russky Island based on the Far Eastern Federal University. It'll concentrate on research and practical solutions in marine engineering, biotechnology, biomedicine, and other promising avenues to be pursued. I would like to ask the governments from the government and from Primorsky region to use the tool of a Far Eastern concession for the implementation of this project. I would also like to ask them to think about the tools for attracting scientists from Russia and from other countries. I refer to competitive motivational projects as well as the social packages for the specialists and their families.
Distinguished colleagues, we understand the success of implementation of our plans here in the Russian Far East and all over Russia depends first of all on people, on Russian families. I have said many times, we should not be guided by old logic. First we build plants and factories, and only then we'll think about those who work in these enterprises. Such logic is not just. It does not function in the modern economy, in the economy of the future that is being constructed around people. That is why, together with the new economic plans for the Russian Far East, we have also started major social initiatives. We have launched the mechanism of a unified subsidy. Thanks to it, we build and repair schools, kindergartens, clinics, hospitals, sports facilities. Urban environment is being improved as well as infrastructure. Today, we have already built almost 2,000 social and infrastructure facilities. Unified subsidy has become a powerful financial leverage for the mechanism of a Far Eastern concession. Its task is to attract private investment to social projects. Business companies have already invested more than 120 billion rubles for these purposes, and 36 such initiatives are already being implemented. For instance, here in Primorsky region, a year-round ski resort is being built. In Ulан-Ude National Museum and Theatre, in Petropavlovsk-Kamchatsky, a new public center is going to appear. In Khabarovsk, an art museum. In Magadan and Chita, sport facilities are being built. There, in Chita as well as in Birobidzhan, urban lighting is being fully modernized. Of course, we'll continue to support the work of Far Eastern concession. We'll keep adjusting it for the benefit of citizens and for the opportunities of business. What I would like to underline as well, today, in the context of the state and private partnership, schools, airports, bridges, highways are being built all over the country. Public transport is being renewed, but the volume of such projects is not very high, less than 3% of GDP or 4.4 trillion rubles. To develop this sphere more intensively, we need to improve relevant legislature and the mechanism of work of the state and private partnership. We should make the risks for all the parties, the authorities and the business, transparent, and they should be divided in a just way. For instance, when we implement publicly important projects, knowing the experience and established practices on the projects of technological sovereignty, I propose that the Corporation of Development VEB.RF be one of the obligatory participants of the projects in state and private partnership. The corporation would control the system of risk allocation. It would confirm the benefit of the project for the state as well as for the business. We have already spoken about this with Sergei Ivanovich, and the corporation is ready for that. The same goes for the project of financing, project financing factory that stimulates private investment. So I ask the government, together with VEB, determine the specific parameters and scale for deals in the context of state and private partnership that should be implemented with the obligatory participation of the VEB. Going further, it's important for the private investment to be attracted, having long-term plans of development of industries and territories, as well as our settlements, cities, towns and villages for their comprehensive development. That is why we actively promote principally new instrument to improve the quality of life of people. They are called master plans. Many people know about it. Our Russian colleagues mostly know about that. We have already confirmed such plans for 22 administrative centers and urban agglomeration of the Russian Far East, where more than 4 million people live. For instance, for a satellite city of Vladivostok, this master plan will unite in one logic of development a whole agglomeration of Vladivostok, Artyom and Nadezhdinsky district. And we should start implementing it since the next 2025 year. What is the specifics, the meaning of and the approach of these new master plans? We need to see what was done before on the local level. Economic and urban planning authorities were not interacting effectively. Economy, business were developing by themselves mostly. Construction, utilities, social infrastructure were separate. As a result, disbalanced decisions were made and urban spaces were also disbalanced. Now, the region and local administrations have had a series of discussions with the residents and business. They have found problems, determined the potential on all the fields of development for every city, and there is an individual long-term model for every city. In fact, in the context of one document, we have the concept of social, economic and spatial development for every city, with commissioning of transport, utilities, energy and other kinds of infrastructure. And I'll repeat, the integral task here is to improve the quality of life of citizens. This is our goal. The most part of the events of the master plans in the Russian Far East are already designed, but I need to say right now that 70 facilities will be commissioned until the end of this year, and then the pace of implementing these master plans should be increased. To point out federal subjects and bodies that are the most active in implementing this work, the Ministry for Development of the Russian Far East has created a special rating. The leaders in implementing master plans now are Sakhalin and Magadan regions, the Republic of Buryatia, as well as Kamchatka and Khabarovsky territories. I thank colleagues for the pace gained, and I ask to keep building it up. I'll point out that every year we will follow the dynamics of Far Eastern master plans. We'll point out the best regional teams and federal bodies so that the rest could follow suit and use their best practices. I'll add that we have made a decision about additional volumes of budgetary loans to implement master plans approved by the government. We have already allocated 30 billion rubles, and I'll underline this will be additional. There is a confirmed limit since 2025 till 2030, and I propose to allocate 100 billion rubles to implement master plan projects in our Far Eastern and Arctic cities. So, above the limit that the regions can receive according to the standard distribution. Speaking about implementing urban development plans, we should not forget about forming new national projects. They're already on their final stage. Moreover, we need to allocate funds for the development of Far Eastern cities in separate sections. First of all, in the context of such national projects as infrastructure for life, effective transport system, family, long and active life, as well as youth and children. What else should be pointed out? Half of master plan spending for Far Eastern cities falls on extra budgetary sources. It means the investment of business, city-forming enterprises that are ready to build clinics, kindergartens, sports facilities, pave the roads, renew utilities networks, restore cultural monuments, and so on and so forth. As I have already said, we will support such investments of the business because I'm sure that building up the pace of transformation in cities, their share will grow. For instance, from the part of the strategic partners, big enterprises that have their social programs and actively participate in urban modernization where they develop their business. Their resources, capacities and experience should also be used to make master plans a reality. Strategic partners can fully finance the building of social infrastructure facilities in a city, town or a territory where the investment projects are being implemented. After they transfer such a social facility to a municipality or region, they can receive compensation through taxes, benefits or other preferences, and I ask the government to determine the parameters of such a mechanism. I'll underline that the experience of the Russian Far East will be a basis to scale the practice of master plans. As it was pointed out in the message to the Federal Assembly, up to 2030 such strategic documents will be prepared for 200 settlements all over Russia. So we're going to scale this program. Now 22 settlements in the Russian Far East, 200 settlements all over the country, including anchor cities that contribute to the strengthening technological sovereignty of Russia. Going further, comfortable urban environment and social infrastructure are an integral part of modern comprehensive residential development. Far Eastern investors implementing such projects have a right for preferences of the territories of advanced development in the context of the Far Eastern District Instrument. Now it is being piloted in 7 regions. We plan to build 1,800,000 square meters of housing where almost 7,000 people are going to live. In the recent 5 years, the volume of the annual number of housing being built in the Russian Far East has doubled, and by the end of this year we expect commissioning of 5,600,000 square meters of houses. Important determining role is being played by the Far Eastern mortgage. As you know, we have distributed it also for the participants of the special military operation. The loan at a record low 2% rate can be used by young families where parents are less than 36 years old. Moreover, this Far Eastern Hectare program can be used by employees of the enterprises of defense and industry complex, teachers and doctors. The same goes for those who live in the Arctic regions. And we are going to prolong it till 2030. I know that there were discussions in the governments about the terms of such mortgage in the future, and I propose to put a stop here and preserve the rate for Far Eastern and Arctic mortgages without change, 2% per annum. I'll add that since last year, in Primorsky territory, families that have a third child born can receive a payment to repay their mortgage loan in an increased size, not 450,000 rubles as all over the country, but 1 million rubles. And we agreed that the payment of the same size, 1 million rubles, should be introduced for large families in all the Far Eastern regions where the birth rate is below the federal district average. And I ask colleagues to expedite the adoption of legal acts for this measure to start functioning since the 1st July of this year, saying retrospectively. And separately, I would like to dwell on very important issues for our families, for our citizens who live far away from the big land, in remote and small cities and villages of the Russian Far East and Arctic. Our task is to ensure regular, uninterrupted supply of these settlements, reduce the time and cost of cargo delivery. Last year, we have adopted a law on northern delivery. Now we're planning everything in a centralized way on a federal level, and it is being implemented and coordinated in the regions. The transportation and maintenance of cargoes, of light support cargoes, are being prioritized. The supply and delivery of the northern delivery can be supported by budgetary loans. We're also going to develop the anchor transport logistic network of northern delivery, including highways, railway stations, sea and river ports and airports. Since the next year, the United Sea operator of the northern delivery is going to start working. It is going to deliver cargoes to Chukotka first, and then will expand the geography to Yakutia, Kamchatka territory, Arkhangelsk region, and Krasnoyarsky territory. Another topic goes for the medical servicing of citizens who live in remote cities and villages. There are settlements in the Russian Far East where you can go only by railway, and they lack doctors for medical and professional examinations to provide medical help. Since September this year, 5 Far Eastern subjects of our federation, and the next year in the 8 subjects, a mobile consultative and diagnostic center is going to operate. In fact, this is going to be a train, and it will be a real modern clinic and a pharmacy on wheels with cutting-edge equipment and doctors that are going to conduct different kinds of researches. They'll consult with their colleagues from the leading scientific centers of Russia. They'll use AI technologies to form medical reports. And of course, they'll provide professional help, because all the citizens of our country need access to medical help, regardless of where they live. And I would like to thank RZD company, all the doctors, nurses, railway professionals, and other professionals that participate in this honorable and really needed project. And I ask the government to help the company to ensure uninterrupted work of this modern medical center and pharmacy on the basis of a train. One more thing, to strengthen ties between cities and villages of the Russian Far East, will continue developing domestic air connections. By 2030, as already said, the number of passengers in domestic flights in the region should grow up to 4 million passengers a year. I've already instructed the government to approve the corresponding plan of specific steps and events. Its preparation has prolonged, so I ask to make all the necessary decisions rapidly. Another important issue is the aircraft fleet. We need to build our own planes that should be reliable, of high quality, and we need the big numbers. That is why I ask to expedite the elaboration of passenger version of light multi-purpose Baikal plane. We need to launch its serial production as soon as possible. And the cost and technical characteristics of the plane should be competitive, so that the price of the flights would be accessible for citizens. If the situation is different, then we need to subsidize it. Dear friends, in the recent years, the Russian Far East has become more attractive for the youth, for those people who want to learn interesting profession, for professionals that want to show themselves and their skills, their knowledge, that want to try themselves in the profession that they have chosen. There is an inflow of youth from 20 to 25 years to the Russian Far East in the recent 8 years. Our targeted measures of support have functioned. For instance, local teacher, local doctor, local medical assistant have functioned, and teachers and doctors that go to the Russian Far East to work in the towns and cities receive up to 2 million rubles, and mid-level medical workers receive up to 1 million rubles. We are going to prolong this program until 2030, and the payout ratio is going to be increased. It will be a double Far Eastern payout ratio. Another program goes for local cultural professional. It supports local clubs, creative centers, libraries, musical schools, museums, those people who preserve our cultural sovereignty, identity, our traditional values, those who educate our youth. And I ask the government to start implementing this program since the 1st January next year. And of course, if we speak about cultural professions that go to small settlements in the Russian Far East, they should also receive payouts with the increased Far Eastern payout ratios, as well as the possibility to participate in the Far Eastern mortgage program. There are new museums being constructed in the Russian Far East. For instance, in the context of this work, we are going to preserve the memory about the Kuril landing operation in the August-September 1945. It was one of the last battles of the Second World War. It has become the symbol of the courage of our soldiers and officers that defeated the fortifications of the enemy that seemed impregnable. Distinguished colleagues, the whole story of the Russian Far East, of this enormous region that covers more than 40% of our country, is written by committed, brave, strong-willed people. They explored and protected these lands. They preserved the traditions of indigenous people. They opened new places on the map of Russia. They built cities, factories, they paved the roads, they found deposits. Our predecessors that developed the Russian Far East were dedicated to their cause and to our fatherland. And the love for the motherland helped them to set really important big goals. Their heroism, self-sacrifice and achievements today inspire everyone for the deeds. Everyone, or different professionals, doctors, teachers, cultural professionals, teachers in universities, businessmen, all those who work in the Russian Far East are planning to connect their life with this region, including managers of the regional and municipal commons. Since 2022, there is a Muravyev-Amursky program functioning in this region. It trains the personnel for public service. It is also going to include Arctic. The program is in demand and the competition is very high, up to 80 people for a place. Young and ambitious people see that the development of the Russian Far East and Arctic is one of the most interesting and promising tasks before our country. That is why we're going to prolong Muravyev-Amursky program until 2030. I'll repeat, together, the authorities of all the levels, business community, public organizations, citizens, need to participate in implementing new national projects and programs for them to receive a wide Far Eastern dimension. This way we'll make a step forward in developing this strategically important region of Russia and improving the quality of life of people. And of course we're going to widen the ties of the Russian Far East and our whole country with foreign partners, states and companies, our friends that are interested in a solid, long-term, mutually beneficial cooperation. This way we'll continue strengthening the positions of Russia in the world. And I'm sure that together we'll achieve these goals without any doubt. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, President Putin. Shortly, I will give the floor to our distinguished guests. But before that, I have a couple of questions to you, if I may. If we are to look at the data of the Russian Statistics Agency for 2022, we see that the total population of Vladivostok is a bit more than 7.8 million people. At the same period, This year, we see some migration growth and uplift in 3 regions, specifically Kamchatka, Yakutia and Chukotka. You mentioned that over the last 8 years, we've seen a considerable uplift in the amount of young people relocating to the region. But still, we could hardly call this situation stable. And in 2023, you saw a certain migrational inflow and then later again outflow. So one of the measures that could help us motivate people to stay in the Far East are those master plans that you mentioned in your speech. So how do you think, in order to make life of people here at the Far East better, what should be done? I understand it could take a long time to answer this question. Definitely. We certainly need to do more than we have done up until now, but at least we need to focus our attention on 2 major aspects. First one, we need to constantly improve the environment and conditions of living here in the region. We need to create more workplaces. And secondly, we need to make sure that living in this region is comfortable and pleasant. And most importantly, we need to make sure that every single person, every single family has a clear understanding that this intention is here to stay, that the planning horizon is long. Our intentions are serious, and by staying and working here in the region, you will create great prospects for yourself and your children. So seeing this future, seeing those prospects in the long run is crucial. First and foremost, we're interested in the influx of younger people here to the region. They are our future. We want them to set ambitious objectives, and we need to create necessary conditions for implementation of those goals. That's the major thing. And just one more question, if I may. You've already mentioned that the experience of the Far East in implementation of master plans will be scaled to other regions. How exactly will that happen? I've mentioned already that a certain novelty, if you could actually call it a novelty, is that we need to combine our spatial development and economic development. Because in the Far East and in Siberia, well, back in the Soviet times, how was the process structured? A factory would be built, an enterprise, and some very simple housing nearby. This is how small towns would emerge. There would be just one big enterprise, and around this enterprise, some kind of a small, hectic town would come up where people would live. This is the way how Baikal-Amur mainline would be built, and many other enterprises were evolving in this particular manner. Many regions were being shaped by those enterprises. Then the enterprise comes first, then some housing was built for people around it, and gradually, as the story would evolve, they would think what can be done additionally so that life of those people is actually a proper human life that is comfortable and pleasant. Well, the difference to the approach that we have for today is that both objectives have to be pursued in parallel. As soon as we start constructing a major enterprise or a factory, we need to think straight away where the people would live, what would be their careers, what we can offer to them in terms of culture, education, medical services, and those projects have to be launched straight away in parallel. I'm not even going to name them. I wanted to do that first, but I decided not to, because I'm sure not all of it is most probably completed exactly in the manner we expected to. I don't want to say something and then you would catch me by the word and say, well, this project is not actually finished. That is true. That may be the case. But the major principle is exactly as I stated, to do this work in parallel on creation of the infrastructure for people and development of industry and economy in the broadest meaning. Thank you. And now, as promised, I would like to give the floor to our distinguished guests. I apologize. I'm very sorry for interrupting. As I mentioned, there are 22 residential locations that we try to develop right now according to those principles. And generally, in the nearest years, we are going to focus on more than 200 locations all around the country. Thank you. And now it is my honor to give the floor to His Excellency Prime Minister of Malaysia. Your Excellency, Mr. Ibrahim, please proceed.
Здравствуйте. Dear President Vladimir Putin, Vice President of China, Han Zhou, Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. First and foremost, I would like to express my gratitude to President Vladimir Putin for inviting me to this preeminent and momentous forum here in Vladivostok. It is also momentous for me on a personal level because, believe it or not, this is my very first visit to Russia. More than 50 years ago, when I was still an active youth leader, I flew Aeroflot and transited Moscow airport on my way to Belgium for the International Youth Conference. We were not allowed to disembark, only to the transit hotel. So I never got the chance to set foot on Russian soil. And it's real pleasure here to be finally in Vladivostok, where history blends seamlessly with progress and where the vastness of Russia meets the boundless promise of Asia Pacific. As a crossroads of commerce, this city has been shaped by diverse influences, reflecting a rich heritage of Russian and East Asian traditions, making Vladivostok a concert of cultures. Beyond its economic significance, Vladivostok holds a distinctive place in Russian history as a vital seaport and eastern terminus of the legendary Trans-Siberian Railway. This city truly embodies Russia's connection with the East. Here, we find a powerful symbol of our gathering, a convergence of geography, ideas, aspirations, and futures. Since its inception in 2015, the Eastern Economic Forum has consistently drawn visionaries and leaders from around the world. This is fitting, as Northeast Asia, which includes the Russian Far East, is a region of vibrant economic dynamism and immense potential. Indeed, it contributes about a fifth of the world's GDP. I would therefore like to thank President Putin for his vision and leadership in establishing this forum, which continues to foster meaningful dialogue and collaboration. Ladies and gentlemen, Russia is not just a strategic and economic reality that commands attention. Indeed, as a cultural, intellectual, and scientific force, Russia's prominence on the global stage transcends the confines of commerce and geopolitics, reaching deep into the very fabric of human history and thought. Russia's preeminence stems not from military might or economic leverage, crucial as that may be, but from the enduring power of ideas, the beauty of artistic expression, and an unwavering pursuit of knowledge. These achievements from the bedrock of the remarkable soft power, earning Russia a place of global respect and admiration, influencing the hearts and minds of people around the world. For me personally, this influence is most powerfully felt in literature. I say this with earnest conviction because having drunk deeply from the wellsprings of English and Malay literature in my early education, and then later having immersed in the works of Dante, Shakespeare, and Milton, I do believe that life would be so much poorer without literature, particularly Russian literature. In this regard, I can't sing enough praises for the great Russian authors and poets who have explored the profound complexities of life, unparalleled insight, and whose works have had a lasting impact on my understanding of society and human condition. For instance, the works of Fyodor Dostoevsky and Leo Tolstoy, just to name a few, delve into the moral and philosophical dilemmas that define what it means to be human. While Dostoevsky challenges us to engage with the intricacies of faith, doubt, and the human soul, Tolstoy invites us to reflect on the nature of power, responsibility, and the passage of time. Transcending the literary significance, the appreciation of Russian literature manifests the depth of this great nation's impact on global thought and its capacity to inform our understanding of our own ideas, roles within the border currents of history. Furthermore, the appeal and power of Russian literature extends beyond its philosophical underpinnings. Writers like Chekhov, Pushkin, Pasternak, and also my favorite Tsarina Anna Akhmatova have brought to life the joys, sorrows, and struggles of everyday existence with a realism that has resonated with me deeply. Ladies and gentlemen, in its pivotal role in advancing human knowledge through science and technology, Russia has consistently pushed the boundaries of possibility, from pioneering efforts in space exploration to groundbreaking work in nuclear physics and cybernetics. And you have heard yourself the vision and the plan expounded by President, which covers a comprehensive area, which is developmental as much as it is human. These contributions reflect a deep-seated commitment to understanding and mastering the natural world, underscoring Russia's importance in the collective progress of humanity. We are witnessing a troubling trend of protectionism that threatens to fragment the global economy. The rise of tariffs, trade barriers, and restrictions on technological exchange constitute troubling developments. In this regard, the rise of the global south does not signify merely a shift of economic power, but a reconfiguration of global influence, encompassing countries across Asia, China, India, Africa, and Latin America. The global south is on a trajectory to play a pivotal role in reshaping the future of the world economy. According to recent estimates, the global south now accounts for roughly 40% of the world's economic output and is home to about 85% of the global population. By 2030, it is projected that 3 of the 4 largest economies will be from the global south. This rise is a reality that presents both challenges and opportunities. For Malaysia, it is essential that we build strong ties to share the growth and to contribute to a more balanced global order. Like Russia, we see the potential of these developing economies, and we are committed to fostering partnership that can drive mutual prosperity. In this vein, Malaysia is actively pursuing opportunities within the global south and joining fellow nations that seek to create a new paradigm of development, one that is more inclusive, equitable, sustainable, and resilient. In a world of increasing complexity, our future prosperity depends on our ability to adapt, innovate, and build relationships that cut across traditional boundaries. The global south is rising, and Malaysia intends to rise with it. Being an open economy, Malaysia prides itself on doing business with the entire world, and we have benefited greatly from being a vital node in globalized supply chains. Central to this effort is the Madani economic framework, which has implemented structural reform initiatives to trailblaze a more sustainable, inclusive future path for our nation. In Malaysia-Russia bilateral relations, one area ripe for collaboration includes Islamic finance, where Malaysia is regarded as a global leader, boasting a robust ecosystem of institutions that not only adhere to Sharia principles, but also drive innovation in financial investments. Russia, with its sizable Muslim population, stands at the threshold of enormous potential in Islamic finance, and I believe the introduction of Islamic banking in Russia can facilitate joint projects and attract significant investments from Muslim-majority nations. In agriculture, Russia has made remarkable strides, becoming a significant global player in this sector. As one of the world's largest grain producers and exporters, Russia plays a crucial role in ensuring global food security. Russia's agricultural exports has been instrumental in stabilizing global markets amid ongoing supply chain disruptions. Turning to education and research, Russia has a long-standing reputation for excellence, particularly in STEM, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. Fields Russian universities have consistently ranked among the best globally, producing world-class scientists, engineers, and researchers. The recent establishment of the Russian-Malaysian High-Tech Center in Malaysia underscores our commitment to fostering technological innovation and academic excellence. In facilitating cooperation in developing high-tech solutions, particularly in energy efficiency, data transmission, and smart city technologies, we can harness our collective strength to drive innovation and address the challenges of the 21st century. Additionally, the strive for cutting-edge advancements such as AI and semiconductor technologies should be guided by humanistic and altruistic values to ensure that tech rivalry and inequity do not result in the hindrance of free trade in a more fragmented geopolitical landscape. Ladies and gentlemen, as upcoming ASEAN chair, Malaysia will not only focus on strengthening existing ASEAN mechanisms and institutions, but also find synergies with other regions and key dialogue partners to foster development and prosperity. In forging ahead with this approach, of utmost priority will be the need to reinforce the paramount principles of ASEAN centrality, which constitutes the linchpin for consensus building that in turn binds member states in cohesiveness action. We will intensify engagement with other sub-regions and leveraging ties with our strategic partners, including Russia. In light of this, in applying to join BRICS, Malaysia aims to diversify our economic diplomacy efforts and enhance collaboration. I would like to take a moment to express my profound thanks and gratitude to President Putin for his gracious invitation for me to attend the forthcoming BRICS Summit in Kazan in October. We are entering an era marked by intense superpower rivalry, significant global economic upheavals, as well as trade and technology as tools to consolidate power bases against the growing existential threat of climate change. Together, we should continue to cooperate, speak in a unified voice, and exchange ideas and strategy to best policy practices to build a future of even greater peace and prosperity in Asia and the world. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, as we chart the path forward together, let us remember that the true strength of our partnership lies not only in the agreement we sign or the projects that we jointly undertake, but in the shared vision and mutual respect that bind our nation. Bolshaye Spasiba. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Mr. Ibrahim. Well, first of all, I would like to congratulate you with having reached us, and I'd like to say a few words about the philosophy of the Russian soul and the future accession of Malaysia to BRICS. What are the benefits of joining BRICS for Malaysia?
A globalized world. We believe in continuing our trade relationship with all. We have traditionally, cumulatively, very strong investments and trade with the United States and Europe. We are building a greater collaboration with China, who has become a stronger bond together, and China remains one of our major and key partners. Russia has been traditionally a good country that we work well diplomatically. But as I said to President Putin last night, there is vast opportunities. Russia has seen its resilience, its capacity to expand in all sectors. Now, being in BRICS would allow us to benefit and share. Malaysia now is this hub for semiconductor in the region. There are some fields that we can share, but there are a lot of other areas we can. But I think the Global South network of BRICS would give us an opportunity to leverage, to ensure that there is a fair trade practices, that the international financial infrastructure is not monopolized by one country or one region. And then essentially it will be beneficial not only to Malaysia, but I think to the global south and naturally to the whole world. Thank you.
Спасибо.
Vladimir Vladimirovich, when you were talking about the BRICS summit, what are you awaiting from the BRICS summit in Kazan? And in accordance with the results of 2023, $294 million is the trade turnover, $1 billion is the trade turnover of BRICS. How do you assess the possible future developments and de-dollarization? Is this a sign of the present? Well, above all, we are not conducting the policy of de-dollarization. We continue to conduct settlements in dollars. We were kicked out from dollar settlements. But this is not the main point. The main point is that the currency of any particular country reflects the economic power of the country. And the bigger the economy, the more partners it has, the more popular is the currency for trade settlements. Oh, it's natural that when you have a lot of partners, economic partners, you use different types of currencies in settlements. So using currencies for settlements depends on the development of the economy. After the Second World War, the United States used the opportunity of the results of the Second World War in the world economy, conducting the Marshall Plan, creating one global Bretton Woods system, which had been reconstructed and have created a single world currency, the dollar. And it all dependent and continues to depend on the power, on the capacity of economic growth and the economy of the country. And Prime Minister of Malaysia has just mentioned that trends, there is a shift of development of the economy on a global scale. Global South accounts for more than 50% of GDP, world GDP. Well, the BRICS countries occupy 1/3 in the global economy and account for 1/3 of the global economy. So naturally, as far as the usage of different currencies is concerned, I'd like to say that with our partners in BRICS, the usage of national currency accounts for more than 65% of trade operations, which is quite naturally, the political forces of the United States have been deploying non-professional methods and, in a way, moving us toward that decision. They probably understand the mistakes they have made, but it's far too late for them to turn back. They think and they see that something should be corrected, should be altered, because the instruments they've been using are not working. We are using our national currencies in trade operations, but it's difficult to change the situation now. Because in changing anything, they would have to accept making mistakes. So they've been calculating in such a way that we would be destructed, which hadn't happened, but the tendencies are obvious. And the tendencies of development on the global scale are actually moving us towards using national currencies in settlements today. As of today, Chinese economy on the parity of buying capacity is more than half of the world buying capacity. So the volume of buying capacity and the parity of buying capacity is larger. The U.S. occupies the second place in the world, but China is growing, and Chinese currency is used for trade and by trade partners in settlements. And currently, it's Russia is in the third place. We have taken over Germany in this case, and we have taken over Japan. It's true that Japan and Germany have a lot of beneficial trends of development as they are operating in high-tech spheres, but the volumes in our country are higher because we have more opportunity to invest into prospective areas of development. And this is not connected only with political conjuncture. You see, the Europeans and the Americans have made such steps that are moving forward the development of national currencies. As for the development of ties between BRICS countries, they are growing, they are strengthening. In 2005, we formed BRICS. Russia and China were then joined by Brazil. Now we have expanded the number of members. More than 30 countries of the world are ready to cooperate and work within the BRICS, and some of them are ready to join BRICS. The countries boast highly developed economies with rich culture, and they will improve the development of this organization. Thank you. And I would like to turn to one other member of BRICS. I would like to give the floor to Vice President of the People's Chinese Republic, Mr. Han Chen. Welcome. Esteemed President Putin, esteemed Prime Minister Mr. Anwar, Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, hello. I'm very glad to take part in the 9th Eastern Economic Forum. Allow me, on behalf of the President Xi Jinping, to congratulate you with the beginning of the work of this forum. Vladivostok is a window to the world for the Far East and Eastern countries. And thanks to President Putin, Vladivostok organized the first Eastern Economic Forum 9 years ago. This is a very important foundation for the development of cooperation between Eastern countries. The main topic for our future discussion and development is the development of the Far East and its key role in the development of the Eastern area and the Eastern region. Our main aim is development of cooperation, mutual trust, and mutually beneficial ties. Under the strategic chairmanship of the President of China and the President of Russia, we have been developing the relations between China and Russia in the new era. This year, the presidents have met in Peking and Astana and have drawn up plans for multilateral development of ties between the countries to commemorate the 75th anniversary of the establishment of diplomatic ties between Russia and China. We will overcome all the difficulties following this path, and on this path, solving and resolving the burning issues for our countries and developing mutually beneficial ties in the economy and developing the economy. The Far East and China are geographically close, and they have a lot of benefits in the development of trade, investment, energy, and transportation connectivity. Being natural partners, China has been the largest strategic trade partner for the Far East. The trade turnover between Far East and China in 2023 was $33.8 billion, having grown by 54%. Currently, in the northeast of China, we are cultivating the openness of China in connection with the development of ties with the Far East and Russia. The cooperation of Far East and northeast of China is one of the most important issues, and we must point out the successful 8th Russian-Chinese Expo conducted in Harbin. President Putin took part in the opening of this exhibition, and this was laying the foundation for future development of cooperation and ties between our countries. We are ready, together with the Russian government, to be guided by the treaties and agreements on the development of trans-border structures and infrastructures to grow the scale and the quality of our relationship and cooperation and continue the long-term development of Chinese and Russian relations, to make a contribution into the prosperity and development of the region. On the basis of the changes which have taken place on the international arena, and our hopes towards peace and peaceful coexistence are becoming the main trend. The initiatives on global security and global initiatives of the development of civilization, which were put forward by President Xi Jinping, have become the main trends for the development and given impulse for the development of mutually beneficial ties and development of our countries. We are ready to consolidate our efforts in bringing peace and prosperity to the region and the world. In connection with that, I would like to propose the following. Firstly, to adhere to the principles of openness and inclusivity, to cooperate in the sphere of different trade and cultural ties, and to focus towards mutually beneficial ties and mutual benefits, to counter protectionism and counter unilateral sanctions and pressure on countries. We are ready to strengthen fraternity and on the basis of principles of openness and mutual respect in continuation of mutual development, to foster mutually beneficial cooperation is important in order to achieve high results in the development of Southeastern Asia and for the prospective development of the region as a whole. We're working to find new points of mutually beneficial ties and stable, seamless supply chains in such new areas as artificial intelligence, green economy. For the future development of our countries. The third point is to provide for comprehensive security in the region. Security is the foundation of safety, and safety is the result of strengthened security. And the world is developing on a global scale. We need to combat the mentality of Cold War and the usage of double standards. The peace and stability, which are the prerogatives of Northeast Asia, is our main aim. We are ready to strengthen our ties and friendship in order to provide for the security of the whole region and on a global scale. Esteemed ladies and gentlemen, the third plenary session of the Communist Party of China has taken place not so long ago, and Chinese modernization follows along the lines and plans for its future development on a high level of openness, strengthening of ties, opening up the region for peaceful coexistence between countries. We are ready to develop modernization and on the basis of mutually beneficial cooperation between countries and on the basis of flourishing economy on a global scale. I would like to wish you fruitful work at the forum. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thanks a lot. Thanks to the Deputy Chairperson of the Chinese People's Republic, and I would like to talk about the acute issues of the agenda, and it refers to the development with the AIPAC and the armed forces of Ukraine are striking the facilities in the border areas of Russia. How do you assess the situation at different fronts and in the border areas? What are the perils taken into consideration that the strikes are against the NPPs? When we talk about these things, we should think, first of all, about humans who are suffering from these acts of terror, and the sacred obligation of the armed forces is to thwart the enemy from these areas and to protect the citizens. And the whole of the country should do their utmost to give support to the people. And the goal of the enemy was to force us, getting jittery and moving the troops from one sector of the front to another, and stop our advance at the key front areas in Donbass, first of all. And the advancement in these areas is our ultimate goal. Did they succeed? Nope, they didn't manage to succeed. Our armed forces stabilized the situation and started forcing the enemy out. And the second, which is most important, no actions to contain our advance took place. More than that, relocating their large and well-trained reserves, the enemy got weaker at the key fibers, and our troops accelerated our offensive, and we gained a lot of territory. The East grouping has acquired an area of 5/7, and the center grouping is very proactive in Donetsk area, and they seized square kilometers of territory like 4/5, 3/5 kilometers, etc. And then another thing which is important, there are heavy losses for the enemy, both in manpower and material. I won't be throwing any figures to you. The information is available in the Ministry of Defense, and the figures of the losses are confirmed by a number of these sources. And as a result, it could result in the collapse of the front line in some areas, and the combat capacity of the Ukrainian armed forces could be lost. That's what our ultimate goal is. That's the general estimate of what is happening, and of course the General Staff and the Minister of Defense report the situation to me several times a day. You have mentioned already that people are the most important thing, and that they are being protected. While in Vladivostok, you have mentioned, you have also asked about the strikes against NPPs in Kursk and Zaporozhye. These are very hazardous and dangerous acts of terror. You can just imagine what will happen if our retaliation is just the same. You have visited the base of Flotilla, and you had a discussion of the sea commanding officer of 155th Brigade of the Marines, and you had the discussion with the CEO, and one of the issues discussed was providing residential quarters to the personnel. And it's a contradiction, isn't it? And not quite. And the brigade commander of 155 did not have been talking about householding the things, but actually it was me who has been looking for the place to build civil residential quarters, and I'm sure that it is necessary to implement the construction plans in time, and they will be fulfilled. And of course, the other commanding officers have raised different issues about the well-being of the soldiers, and I have been talking with the CEO of 118th Brigade and of the Pacific Fleet, and of course there are some requirements for the residential quarters for the personnel of the boys who are fighting over there, and they are doing their duty in a heroic manner. And by the way, one of the tasks of the enemy when they made an incursion into the Russian territory was to stir up panic, but what did it result in? It resulted in the consolidation of the society. That's what always is happening in Russia. It is signified by the fact that the number of the men who are signing contracts with the armed forces has grown. Another thing, as far as social welfare of the servicemen is concerned, the country should take care of it. And the CEO of the 110th Brigade of the Black Sea Fleet stated that the authorities over there are prepared to allocate land, and if the land, the plots of the belonging owned by the Ministry of Defense are not enough. So I had a discussion. The necessary resources will be allocated. You have mentioned that Kiev might start negotiations with Russia if there is a failure of their offensive in Kursk region. I have mentioned it already that we have already coordinated all the parameters of peaceful cooperation with the representative of Kiev. That was reached. We have come to terms about everything. More than that, the head of the delegation of the Ukraine, and who is still the head of the ruling fraction of the party in the Ukrainian parliament, has endorsed those agreements. It was necessary to iron up some subtleties, but still he has his endorsement. And then Mr. Boris Johnson of the UK came and he instructed the Ukraine to fight till the death of the very last Ukrainian. That's what's happening now, trying to achieve strategic loss of Russia, but that's not happening, and that the authorities of the Ukraine have stated that had they been implementing what was agreed on, the war could have happened a long time ago, had they not been listening to the instructions from the third parties. We have never refused to talk with them, but not on some wishful thinking ideas, but based on the documents that have been already agreed on and endorsed between the two parties. And is there any understanding of what country could be a mediator if the further negotiations occur? We respect our friends and partners who, I think, are sincerely interested in addressing all the issues and resolve all the issues associated with this conflict. First of all, it is Chinese People's Republic, Brazil, India. I'm in contact with my partners, and I have no doubt that the leaders of these countries, and we have the relations of trust and confidence with one another, will be really interested and provide a helping hand. And the whole trouble started with the coup d'etat in Ukraine in 2014. They keep telling us about the human rights and about the principles of the rules of law, but what was the coup d'etat then? It was a bloody coup d'etat which resulted in a part of the population of the Ukraine not agreeing with what had happened. They started fighting for their right, and it resulted in the ongoing conflict. But the other parties try not to recollect, to think about it and to remember it, but we are aware about it, and we will be protecting the interests of the people who are close to us and who are Russian speakers and who are the bearers of the Russian culture that Mr. Anwar Ibrahim has been talking at length about today. So we understand that the negotiations are possible not with Kiev, but with its foreign mentors. Do you think, if the negotiations are over there, do you think it will be possible to believe the agreements? And because repeatedly Russia has been deceived, because it refers to the advancement of NATO to the east. Is there understanding how to deal with them now? We understand who we are dealing with, and these are the parties and the people who disregard the opinion of the others and then do not stand on their word, and they violate the signed agreements, the legally binding documents, but we should look for such guarantees and assurances that could be working. But the most important guarantee and assurance of security is the growth of Russia's economy and military potential of the Russian Federation, and reliable and stable relations with our partners and allies. Mr. Anwar Ibrahim, we have discussed it now with President Putin that Russia has been trying to find a peaceful solution. And why do you think the negotiations in Istanbul were a failure and the negotiations failed?
I happened to be on a visit to Istanbul, and President Erdogan asked me to extend for a day because he was busy monitoring the development of the progress of the negotiations. And naturally I knew, and I thought at that time that the issue will be over, because apparently both parties have agreed the principles and the parameters. So I think I am, of course, of the view that you must secure peace, and it will help immensely not only with these two countries but the entire world, because it is disrupting the global chain supplies and etc. But you must start from somewhere, and as I understand, the parameters laid down in Istanbul was probably the basis for that understanding, and should work from there. And I think both sides have agreed, and I think President Putin is right. We support the initiative, but we must begin somewhere with the parameters that is fair and just. And one cannot renege on a commitment on these issues. And I think most countries should then implore that some basis, particularly that was agreed upon, must be honored, and so that we can secure peace as soon as possible.
Александр, извините. Да, вы сказали о том, что нам не удалось.
You have mentioned that we have not agreed with the help of President Erdogan, but we did manage to come to terms, to agree, and the document has been endorsed by the Ukraine. It means that on the whole, these agreements and the terms and conditions of the contract satisfy the Ukraine, and the only reason it was not implemented because they have been instructed and lectured not to live by the contract, and the ambition of the West was to reach a strategic loss, strategic defeat for Russia, to break it into pieces, and they believe that here is the manna from the heaven, and they will manage to achieve the strategic goals that they've been striving to achieve for centuries. Boris Johnson came and he said, no, keep fighting, and that's why they're still fighting. I was under the impression that those that are the leaders of the Ukraine are aliens or foreigners for their own countries. They do not think about the destiny of their own country, because such heavy losses, I don't know what they will be doing in the future. It is necessary now for them to bring down the age bracket for to drafting people and doing what they did in Nazi Germany, Hitler Jugend, but that will not help. Next step will be to draft students, and it will bleed the country. And I'm just under the impression that it's not their peoples, but the relatives of the leading elite live abroad. They hop abroad, and that's it. So they're just covered, and they proclaim the nationalistic slogans and fooling their populations. But once again, I would like to state that if there is a desire of the Ukraine to carry on with the negotiations, I can do that, but based on the agreements that were achieved in Istanbul. And another subject matter, there is such a notion as Malaysian economic miracle, thanks to the economic zones that you have set up. What are the conditions for business, and are Russian companies welcome there?
Yesterday and even this morning, we as a policy do not regard, as Vice President of China mentioned, we do not accept unilateral sanctions, but we are, of course, trying to resolve that so that we are not seen to be confronting any power or economic power in particular. So we focus on economic zones in the country, and Russian companies, I've told them, we are an independent country, the centrality. We want to be engaging with Russia more effectively, and I was extremely delighted that many of them are coming. When I asked them, when are you coming? They say, we're planning. Some are saying, we will go next week, and a group will come in October. So there is interesting progress in interest, because, of course, we are fortunate because of the situation and our relations, more so with China these days, that we have, for example, growth registered in the last quarter 5.9%, with inflation at 2%, with huge investments, also from the United States, particularly in the digital and energy sector, and Germany in particular. So I think we will do whatever is necessary. We can learn from the comprehensive plan package that President Putin mentioned, and there is enormous potential. I mean, the Russians should not in any way feel that we are influenced by others or prejudiced against others. There is this potential and this special relationship that Malaysia wants to offer to Russia as a friend of ours.
Спасибо.
Thank you. President Putin, when we talk about the special regime, it is the free port of Vladivostok and advanced development zones. How competitive do you think with the other preferential regime in the APEC countries? Are you satisfied with what is happening in the Russia Far East? We are happy to create a competitive environment and conditions over here. I will not go through the list, and many sitting in this conference hall are aware of what these measures are. It is the advanced development programs and free zones, free port of Vladivostok. There are many incentives provided to the business. When I start talking it at the governmental meetings, the prime minister is just getting nervous because he believes that we would like to give even more preferences. He said that's enough. There are so many. The Deputy Premier of Chinese People's Republic just referred to the Economic Forum in Harbin, and he was over there. He was sent to Harbin by Mr. Xi Jinping, our great friend, and I am thanking to the Deputy Premier for the work that took place over there. It was very interesting. And something that I would like to say, I think it was unexpected for both our guests and our audience. Will you spill the beans? Yes. It will be also unexpected for our Premier and for Mr. Herman of Sberbank as well. No, they are okay. They will be able to stomach it. But that's what I would like to say. I have been talking with the representative of our diplomatic office in Harbin, and I asked him what is necessary to do for Chinese investors to come to the Far East. And he said the Chinese authorities do not restrain their investors. Anyone or any who can go over there can invest. But the conditions that are created in Harbin are more favorable than we have in the Far East. That's what it is.
So the Chinese authorities have been working on special economic zones. They have been putting in place conditions for economic development, so we have to have a closer look at the benefits and preferences that the Chinese authorities are setting up in their territories, including in the border regions, so as to attract businesses from other countries, in particular from the friendly nation of China, to make them come and invest. We have to analyze all of that, and maybe we could complement some of these tools and instruments with some novelties, with innovative solutions to make sure that there is an interest on the part of investors and business circles. Yes, we are creating a favorable environment, but there's still some work to be done. That's what I wanted to say. Vice President Han Zheng, I would like to ask you, what are you doing to make sure that the Chinese businesses stay in China instead of coming to Russia? How do you... why are you asking such provocative questions? Well, because it's a provocative question. Yes, we've got to attract them to Russia to come here. From the outset, I would like to say that the Chinese government has always been supporting Chinese investment abroad, and in particular to Russia and to the Russian Far East. President Putin has mentioned China's cooperation with the Russian Far East. President Putin has broached this subject, and we discussed this subject when we were in Harbin. And we've got to have a look at this question at both sides. On the one hand, China and the Russian Far East are engaged in very close, high-level cooperation. We've got a very solid foundation for such cooperation. And we've got some tangible outcomes of this cooperation. As far as I'm aware, over the first 7 months of this year, in cooperation between the Russian Far East and the north east of China, the trade has exceeded $60 billion. And that accounts for about 40% of the total trade between our two countries. So the trend is very positive, very dynamic. On the other hand, we have to look into the future. First of all, we've got to preserve this positive trend. In the trade between the two countries, the foundation for cooperation is very solid. The Russian Far East has a huge potential in terms of logistics, transportation, energy, agriculture, and mining. So we've got a very wide gamut of avenues of cooperation to be pursued. And we've got to preserve this strength, but this is not enough yet. We've got to look into the future, and we've got to expand our cooperation to other industries. I refer in particular to green development, digital economy, and probably maritime industries. And of course, culture needs to be covered as well as art. There's a very big potential in these fields. Let me share with you one experience of mine, an adventure, as it were. At President Putin's invitation today, this morning, I visited two branches of Russian universities here. One of them is the Conservatoire branch in Primorsky Krai. And you know, this trip has left an indelible impression. I've looked at these facilities, I've looked at the buildings, I saw students and school children, you know, from the third year of the university. They were performing admirably, playing some classical music, dancing, and the ballet, the Swan Lake, namely, and I was deeply impressed. And I said, yes, we've got a very good level of cooperation between our two countries in these fields. And I'm happy to see that each year there is a very big flow of Chinese students coming to Russia to study arts. As far as I know, from Heilongjiang province, 40 students have arrived as of now to Russia. So there is a very big mutual interest between these two regions in deepening their ties and cooperation, and the Chinese government has always been supportive of all businesses and companies, be that public-owned or private ones, supporting their investment into Russia's economy and the economy of the Russian Far East in particular. So we've got very wide cooperation opportunities. Thank you. Prime Minister Ibrahim, two secrets have been revealed. We've got to learn the third secret from you. Is Malaysian business interested in coming to the advanced development territories and the free port of Vladivostok to work in a full-fledged manner here?
The region, Vladivostok, was something new to us. This is my first visit, and a number of discussions have taken place. But Russia as a whole, of course, has been given enough attention. There's been growing trade and investments jointly in, of course, energy sector, industrial complex, and also in digital technology. We're sending more students to Russia, and there, of course, this can be explored specifically. We're not as powerful as China. We're trying to be. It will take time. Thank you.
Спасибо.
Thank you, Mr. President. Well, it's very nice to hear some reaction. When there's a round of applause, then it means that we are moving in the right direction. If we look at the statistics from the Ministry for the Development of the Russian Far East, over the last 10 years, we have had 4,200 billion rubles that has been invested over these years into Russia. Is it much or not so much? And what about the rate of investment? Is it going to grow or be preserved? Because, you know, Mr. Trutnev has asked you to raise the goal, the benchmark, to 12 trillion by 2030. I think it's a big sum, but not enough yet, not sufficient. Mr. Trutnev has made his traditional report on what has been achieved. Over the previous year, we, as is tradition, have also participated in the launch of new companies, new facilities, and there is a view according to which this investment can be boosted to at least 12 trillion rubles. So by another 1.5 trillion, and I think this is a realistic goal. Thank you. Mr. President, let's get back to the recent developments. At the end of August, Pavel Durov, CEO of Telegram, was detained in Paris. He was later left under judicial surveillance, and he had to post bail. So why did Moscow not do what Paris has done? And, you know, there's been a lot of talk that you had a meeting in Baku. Is that true or not? I met Mr. Durov once in Moscow. That was a long time ago, many years ago. He spoke to me about his plans. So, you know, I've got regular meetings with business circles, and he attended one of the meetings that took place in the Kremlin in Moscow. I do not remember when exactly. It was many years ago. He spoke about his plans for his future businesses. And since that time, we've not had any contacts. So why meet in Baku? I do not know why I would have done that. Moreover, I was not aware that he was in Baku. Well, if there is an interest, you know, there are many business people here. I often attend and organize meetings with businesses. We meet as part of association of entrepreneurs, or I meet with businesses individually, especially if businesses need some guarantees or assurances from the government. Both myself and the chairman of the government and the federal ministers are always willing to do that. This is what I've always had in mind. We do not try to erect any war between ourselves and the business. So if he wanted to meet us, then he could have done it. But I didn't know that, and I thought he lived in Moscow. No, he doesn't live in Moscow. He lives in Dubai. Well, people of the world, billionaires, they can afford to live wherever they please. We do not have any grievances with him. But I know there are many grievances on the part of many countries, given the fact that this platform is, to a certain extent, used by different people, different organizations that, whose activities could prove to be deleterious, either to the economy or to the security of any particular country. And I think the government of Russia could have some questions to address to him, but, you know, this is the problem with any platform of this type. If they're treating Durov like that, maybe they should detain others as well, put them on under house arrest. So the actions of the authorities, this is something I do not understand, because I mean the authorities of France, because they are very selective. Okay, thank you. Prime Minister Ibrahim, last year your country registered a record number of Russian tourists, 110,000 people. It's a growth of 37% year on year, and this is not the limit yet. To boost these numbers, do you have plans for direct flights?
We should not preclude Aeroflot going to Malaysia. Firstly, we have been seen and more attractive to Russian tourists. You know, there's a huge increase in a year, and I think the issue of flight is one consideration. We say to have agreed in principle. We are working on it as fast as possible, and then of course to introduce Malaysia to Russian public, and I think they would, once they get to know the country, is peaceful, is economically vibrant, and a very beautiful country. I mean, I don't want to compete with Russia or China, but at least what we have in Malaysia, you don't have in Russia. But what you have in Russia, we don't have in Malaysia. So it is important for both countries to increase the passage of tourists, because they will see things that they have not seen in their countries. And I really hope that there is that potential for Russians to come, and we do encourage. I mean, Malaysia is a friendly nation, no prejudice. We are not dictated by any power, and we want to have that sort of special relations with Russia as we have with many countries. I think once you go there, you will find out that Malaysia is truly Asia.
Господин Ибрагим, ну что посмотреть в России? Я думаю.
Prime Minister Ibrahim, and what about Russia? The Russian tourists come into Malaysia. What should they see in Malaysia? What is the essence of Asia?
The multiracial society, we have a strong strong ethnic, indigenous and also Malay population. We have a large number of Chinese ethnic minorities and Indians and indigenous tribes. We have a range of what is called virgin jungles. You have beautiful beaches and it's equatorial climate. We don't have winters, so you can have your swim throughout the year. And that's, of course, to my mind, an advantage. I always have difficulty when travel because you always ask the question, is it going to be winter, is it going to be summer, is it hot, it is winter? So you have to change dress. In Malaysia, you can come comfortably as long as you wear something and you are fine.
В зале стало, кстати, больше улыбающихся лиц на этой фразе, что всегда в
Well, everyone is smiling when you said that it's warm and nice in Malaysia. Well, I've been to Malaysia and I can confirm everything Prime Minister has just said. Mr. President, we've spoken about tourism. You are traveling a lot across Russia. We are developing domestic tourism as well. In 2023, 83.5 million Russians traveled across Russia. That's a 23% increase, and many are coming to the Russian Far East, more than 6 million last year. What kind of economic benefit does it bring to Russia, this increase in the tourism exchanges? And many countries across the world, tourism is one of the dynamic industries. Well, we shouldn't go far. Yeah, you know that around 5 million people from Russia go to Turkey, and this is an important source of income for the budget of the country. Tourism is becoming an increasingly efficient industry across many economies of the world, and this should also be the case in Russia, given the vast tourism potential we have, and that's why the government has adopted a whole program dedicated to developing internal tourism. A lot has been said on the subject. I'm not going to add anything new, but to these ends, we need to develop the infrastructure, we need to care for the environment to make sure that the development of tourism does not have a harmful effect on the environment. We've got many projects like the 5 Seas and Lake Baikal. Many are aware of about that and have heard about it. There are special preferences to those who build small hotels, especially if these are not permanent buildings, and all of that is delivering results. There is a wonderful region of Russia, the Russian Far East, and its tourism potential is infinite, and it's going to attract an increasing number of tourists, and it's great that Russian citizens are turning their gazes increasingly towards internal tourism opportunities, because it means staying within your area of culture, of your language. You don't have to run into problems when crossing the border, the customs, and you can communicate with our history, with our tradition, with our nature. And this is something fascinating, that's magnificent, but we still have a lot to do to bolster this process. And as for the benefits for the people, well, if you live in a territory which is visited by tourists, then your level of living, standard of living is growing, because it means more money coming into the regional budget and to the budgets of all levels, and also brings money to the citizens who live in this region. The more attractive a region, the more investment it attracts from the private investors. So this is a win-win situation, and it's kind of a virtuous circle. But these are the prospects. But if we look at the statistics, we'll see that the economy is doing well. The unemployment is 2.4%, which is a record low. But if we study the statistics, we see that some key industries are lacking human personnel, because 47% industrial enterprises were suffering from shortages of labor. These are some of the latest statistics. Does it mean that the economy is doing too well, or maybe we simply lack manpower? Well, the economy is doing well, but there is a lot to do. We remember Faustus by Goethe. Oh, please stop, you wonderful moment in time. We never should stop. We have to reach for the horizon. Nothing can ever be all can never be good all the time. But of course, the economy is developing steadily on the whole. Last year, we were rejoicing because our GDP grew by 3.4%, if my memory serves me right. Whereas in the first 6 months this year, and this is something we discussed yesterday, I said the GDP grows by 4%. Mr. Oreshkin has corrected me. It's 4.6% in the first 6 months this year. This is a very good indicator for our economy. Well, I think it's going to be adjusted by the end of the year, but we can expect that at least it's going to be no less than last year, but probably the GDP growth is going to be even superior to the growth last year, and that is the most important indicator for the state of economy. In Malaysia, inflation stands at 2%. Unfortunately, in Russia, it stands at a higher. Our target for inflation is 4%, but right now it's around 9.2%. But right now there is a downward trend. Right now inflation stands at 8.9% and is decreasing, which is a good thing. As far as lack of manpower is concerned, so Mr. Solzhenitsyn, whom Prime Minister has mentioned, he used to say that the most important task for the government is to preserve its citizens, its population. We have to care for families with children. We have to preserve the population. But the labor market is indeed in a unique position. Around 2.5% is the unemployment rate, which is a historic low. This is due to the demands of real manufacturing sector. How do we address this issue? Well, of course, we need to care for the population. We've got to increase the birth rate. We've got to create the favorable environment to make it fashionable to have as many children as possible. In the past, families used to have 8, 9 children per family, but this is just one avenue to pursue. The other one is to increase the labor productivity to make sure we can do more with fewer people. Well, as far as how to go about that, well, Vice President Han Zheng has mentioned several instruments and tools. We need to introduce artificial intelligence. We have to introduce new management methods for production, automate. I remembered Japan, which we overtook, becoming the 4th economy of the world in terms of purchasing parity. But I think there are 10 times more robots working there than in Russia. There's much for us to do.
We should also dedicate us to genetics, biology, agriculture. We have a lot to do in all these fields. And personnel as well. We should train personnel. This is one of the most important tasks of our government. That is why there are the new national projects that is called personnel. Well, let's continue with economic issues. Mr. President, we met a week ago at another session of Central Bank. The rate is going to be 18%, and it is already said that this time 18% will be preserved. As for the loans, and the growth is the same, and the growth is 2.2%. This is according to the central bank data. How can you explain the situation? How can you explain that the rate is very high and the rate loans are different? Well, this depends on two moments. First of all, that the loans, the consumer loans, this at a very high level, because people do not really feel the key rate. And as for loans for organizations, there are certain planes that have already been designed, and despite the increase of the key rate, they keep getting loans. And the second thing is that we have already made a decision according to which we support separate sectors of our economy. There are state instruments related to subsidizing some kind of rates for certain sectors and projects. This is the explanation. The governor of the central bank, Ms. Nabiullina, said that the scale of overheating of the economy was the greatest in the last 16 years. Are there any risks for stability, and how are we going to freeze the situation, to cool the situation? Well, we're going to increase the key rate, cancel subsidized loan, mortgage. There are also preferences for IT mortgages in the Russian Far East, in the Arctic, family mortgages. These are the ways that we're going to follow to cool the situation. There is another factor. Stable work of the government, of the finance ministry, in order to balance the budget. I speak about investment. We've already spoken about the figures in the Russian Far East, but in 2023, according the statistic was the growth of investment was 9.8 growth after the growth in 2022. That trend continues. This trend will continue in investment, and what can also be increased. The preservation of the same pace of investment will be difficult, knowing the circumstances that we have been speaking, but we need to strive to do it. There are unique and special instruments of support that I have mentioned. But I'll repeat, preserving the same pace of investment will be difficult. The government has to think where and in which fields the business will be supported, so that there would not be any risks for collapse in the economy. Another topic that does not concern the economy of the Russian Far East, I would like to ask you about the elections in the U.S. Maybe you have a favorite candidate there. And in November, when we know the results of this race, are you going to call the new president to congratulate the new president? Well, it's been long since I've called any leaders of Europe or the US, but we're not against any type of contacts. We're not limiting them. Yes, sometimes we exchange some kind of information using different channels. First of all, through the foreign ministry. It's not for us to determine. These are elections of the US people. I said that if we can name a favorite candidate, it used to be Joe Biden, but now he is not participating in the election campaign, and he recommended all his allies to support Ms. Harris. So that is what we are going to do. So it was, well, he said that we should. That is why we should also do that. Well, her laugh, she's laughing. Her laugh is so fascinating. It means that everything is good, and if everything is good, it means that, for instance, if we're speaking about Joe Biden, there are so many sanctions against Russia introduced, and if everything is good with Ms. Harris, maybe she'll refrain herself from such measures, or maybe she'll change them. So in the end, it will be the choice of the U.S. people, and we will respect this choice. Speaking about the U.S., in August, there was the exchange of prisoners between U.S. and Russia. What countries were the mediators contributed to that? So it means that we can have dialogue with the West. And one more addition, in an interview to TASS, our ambassador in the U.S., Mr. Antonov, said that there are 60 Russians in U.S. prisons. Well, we care about all the Russians that need our help and that they are abroad, and we will continue to do that. As for the exchanges that we already had, many countries participated in this work, in this mission. As for the journalists of the U.S. journalist that worked as journalist, but in fact he was gathering intelligence data. Saudi prince participated in this work to exchange prisoners, and thanks to that we managed to return our citizens to our country. As well, the president of Turkey, Mr. Erdogan, provided platform to do that, as well as other countries also participated in this work. Some other countries showed goodwill, and in the end, I think that we managed to reach a positive result in the interest of everyone who participated in it. And first of all, our citizens returned to their fatherland. The most important thing that those who were doing some very important things for our country. And I asked everyone here to have a round of applause. Let's return to the topic of our session, Mr. Prime Minister. You already had a meeting with Mr. President. There are prospects, and we need to develop our cooperation. We have agreement about free trade between EAEU with Iran, Iraq, and Serbia. And the same agreement will be signed with Mongolia. There are also negotiations with Indonesia and some other countries. Are there any such ideas in Malaysia?
Free trade, and there's no restrictions, and I've assured President Putin last night that whatever avenues are being introduced will continue. I mean, we still have good relations with Iran and most of these countries. And if the parameters are right, encouraging free trade, we will pursue. There's no issue at all to my mind. Even now, without the special arrangement, you can see this new wave of interest from both sides, in Malaysia and Russia. Now, with the agreement, it would, of course, further facilitate and assist the business community. In fact, we're inviting delegations representing banks, aerospace and industry, and some others to come. And we will. What is important is that my assurance that you will see a faster change, a more positive change in terms of the trade and also exchanges between Malaysia and Russia, and we are determined to record that as soon as possible.
Спасибо.
Thank you. Mr. President, you spoke about the way to solve the problem of the deficit of energy in the Far East that is going to be forecasted. What can you say about electricity generation? Well, it depends on the region. In Siberia, for instance, there is excessive electricity generation, and in the Russian Far East, there is scarcity of energy. So we need to take timely measures. For instance, repair facilities, modernize deeply certain facilities. So we have plans that are being designed. Some of them are already approved. We need to do it on a timely basis and need to establish an economically based plan in this sphere. Concerning energy, there is another question about foreign markets. At the end of the year, the agreement about transit of Russian energy through Ukraine ends, and Ukraine said that it's not going to prolong the contract. What the energy prospects of Europe? Do we need to hear the voices of those who are going to suffer from it? Well, there is the head of Gazprom, just here in the front row. And also I'm going to speak to German Oskovich. They're all here. This is good. They all show interest in the development of their business in the Russian Far East. As for Ukraine, we're not against transferring our energy through Ukraine, because we intend, and Gazprom company intend, to fulfill all our obligations to our clients. We have long-term contracts with them. One of the obligatory components of this work is the transit of our energy. We have transit contracts that expires on the 31st of December this year. But if Ukraine doesn't want to prolong these contracts, we cannot make them do that. So our main consumers in Europe do not want to do that, but they support with military products and with finances to Ukraine. But Ukraine does not want to transit our energy, our gas. That is why the volume of the gas that we provide to Europe will reduce. We will use Turkish flow or other gas pipelines that are used for domestic consumption, but they will help to support energy stability in Europe. But that is their choice. We don't know how this is going to affect them. We have our own issues, and they should dedicate themselves to their own issues. I don't know how to characterize all of this. How to characterize this attitude to their own partners and allies. This is strange for me. I cannot understand that. They blew up our gas pipeline on the bottom of the Baltic Sea. Two pipelines of Nord Stream 1 and one pipeline of Nord Stream 2. Why the German government cannot agree with us? It means that one gas pipeline, 27.5 cubic tons of gas can go through one pipeline of Nord Stream. Why wouldn't they open it? Why wouldn't they use the gas pipeline that we have? They can use the gas that they receive from the Turkish pipeline, is okay, but they cannot use the gas pipeline that goes through the bottom of the Baltic Sea. This is something absurd. Why? Well, if they don't want to, okay, we will raise our supplies to other regions of the world. We'll do it consistently, consecutively. For instance, speaking about China, even before the conflicts, before Ukraine, there were very good supplies to China, and next year we're going to reach 38 cubic meters to China from here, from Sakhalin, from Vladivostok, 10 more million cubic meters, and it does not concern Ukraine. These are our agreements that were reached many years ago. We are implementing all of that, and we're going to develop liquefaction of natural gas. There are experts who know about that even better than everyone else, and the share of Russia's supply of LNG is increasing. It is not really big. We wanted it to be bigger, but despite any complexities that other countries try to create for us, we are still going to supply LNG. some countries try to impede the development of our energy, but this is not possible because the production of energy is at a limit. That is why all these actions are impossible. Let's imagine that tomorrow everything is going to be closed. Gas, oil that we supply. The world economy is not going to overcome this. The prices are going to skyrocket, but people will still buy it. This is the cause. When those who show us do not wish us anything well, when they do that, they do not do this from their heart, and they are not very intelligent if they do that. They're guided only by their arrogance and their self-interest. We are going to solve our problems. If they don't want to cooperate with us, then they will lose money. We see what is happening in Europe, and the situation is on the brink of recession in some of the countries, because those who provide energy resources to them, first of all, think about their own interests, of their own national interests. Because the prices, they provide 50 or 60% more, and first of all, I'm speaking about gas. Of course, the European economy, first of all, Germany, that is based on our energy, is really affected, and many industries just close. But this is not our choice. We are ready. You could agree with Poland for Poland to open their pipelines because they exist. Yamal, Western Europe, it was closed by Poland, and now Ukraine closes another route. As for the Nord Stream 2, it is not being used. If they don't want to, well, that's their choice. Yes, we're going to have a less inflow of finances, but then we'll use it inside of our country.
Well, we will be willing to develop the so-called social gasification. Well, I'd like to specify about gasification. Since we've heard Mr. Miller mentioning the amount of gas being transported through the Nord Stream pipeline, I wanted to ask you about those projects that are being implemented in Malaysia, with Iran and China. Does Gazprom have prospects to recover the current volume of gas supplies to the foreign markets? Well, I've mentioned that already. We're about to reach design capacity of supplies to the People's Republic of China. As for the supplies to the Malaysia, well, Iran specifically, I want to make it very clear that is not directly related to the events in Ukraine. It's just that the economies of those countries are actively developing. They therefore require additional resources. It's as simple as that. Again, take example of Uzbekistan. It is a well-known fact. The incremental growth of population is 1 million people a year. Just imagine it. 37 million people are already living in this country. Very soon it will be 40 million. The economy is growing. And of course, they have some commitments undertaking at the foreign markets. Obviously, all of that requires additional resources. It was minus 21 degrees centigrade in Tashkent last winter. That has never happened before, I guess. Obviously, they need more fuel, more energy resources, and we have them available. So we will be coordinating our actions with Turkmenistan, obviously. Iran has long been requesting us to provide supplies. But this is very convenient for us. The reserve is close nearby, and we'll be thinking about that. I believe this is a very doable project. The neighboring markets are huge. I mean, the markets close to Iran, and the opportunities there are colossal, and we will be able to pursue those markets. And of course, we'll be engaging in gas liquefaction projects, and obviously gradually we will be recovering the volume of sales on our side. No doubt on that. And of course, we'll be developing our domestic economy in many regions, and specifically here in the Far East, there is a clear deficit of gas generating capacities, and Gazprom already has plans to merge the European part of gas transporting system and the Far Eastern part, so that we take care of the proper supplies and distribution. We have plans for that. Thank you. Let's continue this conversation about energy. Mr. Ibrahim, Malaysia is the second largest producer of oil and gas in Southeastern Asia. And by the way, the renowned Petronas towers in the capital are named after the largest energy company in your country. What is your current assessment of the situation in the oil and gas market in the world in general, and whether Malaysia is considering any joint project with Russia in energy sector?
We are discussing the issue of energy transition, where I think Russia has an upper hand. We're discussing that. We're of course still continuing exploration, because the deadline is of course to ease the dependence on traditional dependence on oil or coal. But still, for now, it is important. I mean, we cannot deny the fact that the import of coal from Russia comes about over $600 million. So temporarily, this energy is still required until we are able to transition into green energy. But for now, the focus is there. We still remain to be an important player, and we will therefore have some sort of a synergy, working relations, to ensure that the transition into hydrogen, green technology would be of immense benefit in our attempt to progress as a country that's not totally dependent on fuel.
Спасибо.
Thank you. President Putin, you mentioned it in your speech that right now we are actively developing various solutions for transportation of energy resources. You were saying that by 2030 you plan to increase this indicator of 150 million tons of goods to be transported through the Northern Sea route. I'm wondering, what is the current progress on construction of infrastructure and actual vessels that will be using and circulating along the Northern Sea route? I know that you visited a shipyard nearby here in Vladivostok. Indeed, this is a question that should be at the very center of our attention, primarily because we need to take care of creating of the necessary infrastructure and capacities to take care of cargo transportation. So those are the vessels carrying cargo and the icebreaker fleet, of course. Russia has capacities of unique icebreakers. We have 34 diesel-driven icebreakers of different classes and 7 nuclear icebreakers that we have right now. 3 are already in construction, and the 4th is to be commissioned in 2025. 7 plus 4 makes it to 11, and 1 more very big icebreaker of unprecedented capacities. As far as I remember, that will be 136,000 horsepowers. Well, if I'm to measure an icebreaker in horsepowers, this is the leader of our fleet, and it is already being constructed here in Vladivostok at the Zvezda shipping yard. And that would provide for year-round operations, especially so that this particular new icebreaker is not just powerful, but also very broad and big in size, and could provide for the whole caravans of vessels to go through the Northern Sea route. We obviously need to build the vessels to carry cargoes, but we'll be also extending the opportunities of the shipbuilding capacities of ours, also in the European part of the country. We've been discussing it just yesterday with Mr. Kostin, the head of VTB Bank, and also the talents that he delegated to the merged shipbuilding corporation. And you're right in saying, indeed, just yesterday, I visited the place that will be used for the construction of the future shipping yard. I'm sure we will get it done. It wasn't easy, but we managed to create the Zvezda shipbuilding yard here. it is important. We need to continue that kind of infrastructure developments, construction of seaports, proper maintenance, of course, safety and security of operations of sea vessels, protection of the environment. We have to approach those issues systemically and comprehensively, and I'm convinced our plans will be implemented, especially taking into account the current change happening to the climate. The opportunities of the Northern Sea route are becoming more abundant, and I'm convinced that it will be working the whole year round. This is extremely important for the Russian economy and global economy alike, for our friendly economies, specifically for the economy of the People's Republic of China, who is demonstrating lively interest towards joint work in this area. So we would like to invite all of our partners to join us. Now, we talked about construction. Let's talk about construction of apartments, residential construction here in the Far East. We know that a subsidized mortgage is still available here, despite the fact that it is no longer available in the rest of the country. And I'd like to quote Herman Greff here. The exit of and the completion of the subsidized mortgage is overdue. What do you think? Have we resolved the problem of availability of housing now since we closed the program? Well, we've just heard Mr. Ibrahim quoting Tolstoy and Chekhov. Why are you quoting Herman Greff? Well, is he another great novelist in Russia apparently now? Well, whatever. If we are to talk about construction and residential construction, I do believe we have achieved some outstanding results in construction. We've never seen the construction volume of residential housing. The one we have last year is about 110 million. This is an impressive number, although the target was 120, but 110 is already a very good number. And since the subsidized mortgage loans are no longer available, it would inevitably affect the residential construction market. But I'd like to reiterate that we still have subsidized mortgage for IT experts in the Arctic and in the Far East. But the actions of our financial authorities and the Russian government are aimed at cooling down the market a little bit. Yeah. And I would like to quote Madam Nabiullina in this regard. Yeah, that's true. The governors of the central bank mentioned that we can't afford to have the market overheated, and we do not want that to badly affect our macroeconomic indicators. But nonetheless, I want to say that we have a very solid backup and a very solid foundation in terms of construction. Well, now, we do not get to quote Mr. Mutko that frequently, but he's still a renowned expert, I have to say, and he knows how to find the right words to express himself. So Mr. Mutko is doing a great job there from all of his heart. Yeah, all of his heart, but most importantly, with very good results. And this is not an irony on my side. Indeed, we see an impressive result, 110 million square meters of residential construction commissioned last year. And that is happening thanks to the work of the corporation that Mr. Mutko is leading now. Again, we have some very solid foundation there, 165 million square meters is the amount of construction that we have. So I'm sure next year we will be fine. One more question to you, Mr. President, and then we will move on to other topics. One of the most hotly debated topics lately is that starting from November, there is a new law coming into force legalizing mining of cryptocurrencies. Before we had Federal Law 259 adopted on digital assets. Does that mean that Russia is heading into the area of digital currencies and cryptocurrencies? And should we expect some more legal novelties in this regard? Well, I believe already today Russia is one of the world leaders in terms of mining of cryptocurrencies and bitcoins, and I guess this is due to the surplus of power generating capacities in Siberia. But there are some questions associated with that. We are obviously happy to see that businesses operating in this area is getting some good profits, but nonetheless, the surplus of power generating capacities in Siberia must not become a deficit that could be an interfering factor for development of Siberian regions. Mining is good, but construction of apartments for our citizens, construction of enterprises and factories will all need energy supplies. Those are no less and probably even more important than mining developments. That is why the government has taken a decision that is supposed to structure this process. And as for digital currencies and digital ruble specifically, the decision is already taken by the Central Bank of Russia, and right now we are simply ramping up those volumes. Russian ruble is just one of the types of currencies, a type of a national currency that will be made available for participants of economic operations and Russian citizens alike. Thank you very much. As promised, I'd like to move over to the next topic. Mr. Ibrahim, I'd like to address you. We can't forget about the conflict in the Middle East. Please share with us your vision. What is the exit from the current situation?
As I've consistently said, we cannot use the narrative of many in the media or Western capitals that it all began with the 7th of October, Hamas attack. It all began with colonization. It all began with the Nakba in 1948. It all began because of the reluctance to accept the resolutions of the United Nations consistently, and of continued harassment of settlers in the West Bank. So I think we need to put the narrative right. Do we want a solution? Yes. And I commend, of course, the Russian position, the Chinese position. Foreign Minister Wang Yi have taken initiative, and many countries. And I think the majority of countries have taken a position, including recognition of the state of Palestine. But why is it not happening? Because of the intransigence of Israel, and unfortunately with the total support of the United States. In fact, giving him a standing ovation when atrocities are being committed. That's why I ask my colleagues, even in the West, where's the humanity? Why do you talk about justice? Why do you go and preach to us about human rights and democracy? Why is there contradiction when it comes to treatment of issues happening in the world? And again, what we need in this world now is a consistent, coherent message. Yes, we respect freedom. Yes, we respect the dignity of man or woman. Yes, we must oppose all forms of colonization. Because what is the issue in Palestine now, not only in Gaza, but all in Palestine, is the issue of dispossession. You conquer, you take people's land, you dispossess, you kill them, you detain them, you take over their houses, you treat them as a open-air prison, and this is known. That is why I know we come from a small country. We know our limits. That's why we thank our dear friends here for their support. But it is creating so much a problem. Not only the Muslim world, but those who believe in freedom and justice. It is creating problems for us. Because people are saying, why are you not doing anything more when people are being killed daily? And that is my point. So I just hope and pray that there is finally sanity will prevail to those who have influence in the world, because they are finally accountable. No country, no person can continue to do this gross injustice and tolerate the atrocities and think they are safe. I don't believe that can ever be accepted. We want justice to all mankind. And of course, we cannot deny justice because of their different color or different religion or different creed. Justice means justice for humanity. And it's time that Palestine and Palestinians are treated as human beings, not as slaves or second-class people. Thank you.
Спасибо. Владимир Владимирович.
President Putin, as a follow-up to the issue of the conflict in the Middle East, Moscow has repeatedly conveyed its position to both parties. Do they hear us, both sides of the Palestinian conflict, the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, I mean? Well, I could repeat everything that our dear guest has just been saying. The position of Russia is not conditioned by the particular situation or particular precedent. Our position has always been based on the positions taken earlier, and those decisions should be at the heart of resolution of any conflict. Here we're talking about establishment of two independent states, and this position is shared by many people in the world, including, as strangely as it may sound, by many people in the United States. But unfortunately, this conflict has not been resolved, and this particular issue is exactly the reason for the current acute conflict. On our side, and by the way, today's problem is largely related to the attempts of the United States of America to have a monopoly of settlement of this conflict, because the United States is not perceived as a country with neutral position regarding this conflict, and this is exactly the problem. But I'd like to reiterate that we are going to do everything in our power, and I was saying that earlier at the meeting with Mahmoud Abbas. He's been to Moscow lately. We are going to do everything possible to make our contribution to settlement and resolution of this long overdue conflict. Thank you very much. Let's move to the next topic. And sorry, as for humanitarian matters, we are doing our best to address the matters related to the hostages that were taken, and I have to say that in this regard, we are achieving certain results, and we are very happy about it, and we'll keep intensifying our efforts and doing that in the future.
Thank you. One more topic. Mr. Ibrahim, in your introduction, you pointed out that Malaysia is the chair of the ASEAN for the future. What will the priorities in working be, and what will you be? How will you be coordinating your efforts as far as Russia is concerned?
Sub-region is the most peaceful in the world right now, and economically most vibrant. The secret is, of course, in centrality is independent foreign policy position. We refuse to be dictated by any powers, and we maintain excellent relations with our neighbors. With Thailand, we are having a special economic zone to promote and ensure there is more economic activity in the poorer sectors in north of Malaya and South Thailand. With Singapore, we have a special economic zone in Johor, which would encourage more business and investments. And with Indonesia, we have excellent relations. I was just in Brunei. And even on issues that is considered to be quite contentious, our decision is to continue with bilateral mechanisms, multilateral mechanisms. The only issue that we have to confront is Myanmar. It's not spreading in terms of its military activities, but it's causing some problems because, for example, Malaysia has to contend with 200,000 refugees from Myanmar, and I thought my position as ASEAN chair is, of course, to try and resolve. We don't want to dictate. You see, the problem, the failure sometimes in dealing with Myanmar, it's a military junta. You want to ensure democratic transition. I think what is important for Myanmar is peace. Get all the parties to speak and talk to each other and maintain peace. Then they decide for themselves what form of government they want to have, and do not dictate. And our problem with Myanmar in the past is to have to try and dictate to them what sort of government they should have. So in our 5-point consensus, we think that just respect these fundamental rules, we would move. But on a different note, different level, although we do have growing issues about particularly with the Philippines and China, our position is always to encourage the Philippines to continue to engage actively and try to resolve in the true spirit of ASEAN. And if we need to assist, we will continue to engage with our friends because we always feel that there is a way for the future. I think more so, taking that position because of centrality, we do not want this region to be, again, a contentious region for the superpowers. If we have a problem in the region, we resolve in the region. And we do not support any intrusion of other powers into the region. If we have problems, we try and resolve. And that's why I think my presence here in Vladivostok is to convey that message, that I think, contrary to some of the perceptions, we feel that our task is to ensure that we serve our people, that economically it has to be vibrant, and we want to show a new tradition of and diplomacy that engage with most countries, and Russia included. Some countries in the West may have a problem with Russia, they will deal with it. As far as we are concerned, we do not have a problem. We have some issues we want to discuss, we bring it up, you see. So I think we will start that tradition. So in ASEAN cohesion, we want to maintain that sort of relations. We may choose to disagree. I mean, I have very good relations with Premier Li Qiang. Excellent. It does not mean that we can agree on every issue, but we disagree as close friends. They talk about the issue of the more contentious issue with the South China Sea, and they keep on harping. You have a problem with China because of the border. We have a problem with every single country in ASEAN. I mean, those bordering Malaysia, because Malaysia is central. We have a slight border problem with Thailand, with Indonesia, with Singapore, with Brunei, with the Philippines. Is that a problem? No, it's not a problem. These are issues that we discuss. It does not in any way seem to be antagonistic. Why is it when it comes to China, you expect us to go and quarrel with them? I think we will continue to negotiate. Yes, we agree, and some issues we disagree. But in my experience now, I've taken over almost 2 years now as Prime Minister, I don't have a problem with China. So why must countries outside our turf insist that you have a problem? I don't. Now you have a problem, you deal with it. So I think that should be the ASEAN position, and to focus on the fundamentals. Yes, on economy, yes, on technology, yes, on AI, energy, and tourism. And I think it will be a great example of a sub-region that is peaceful and economically vibrant. Thank you.
Спасибо. Господин Джен, у меня к вам вопрос по итогам прошлого года.
Mr. Jen, the question is, the trade turnover with ASEAN has reached more than $11.5 billion. As you see now, how do you assess the prospects of economic development of China? For 40 years, we have been conducting a policy of openness. When China has acceded to WTO, it has continued along the lines of the development of cooperation with countries in the sphere of trade. Within quite a number of years, the Chinese economy has been developing quite vibrantly. And despite the fact that we are the second economy in the world, the per capita income is slightly more than $12,000 per year. But the contribution of China to the world economy is more than 300%. China has become a trade partner for more than 140 countries in the world. President Putin and Prime Minister Anwar have put a very valuable proposal on the table which should be taken into account, and that concerns abolishing poverty in China. This will be a contribution to the development of the world economy, as it is, because the population is more than approximately 18% of global population. So cooperation and exchange and partnerships with other countries in the world are also always conducted on the basis of mutually beneficial ties. President Putin has pointed out that we need to stick to mutually beneficial cooperation, which is quite right. And as you all know, not so long ago, we conducted a third plenary session of the Chinese Communist Party, and a decision was taken to continue reforms of the Chinese economy, and China will continue along the path of reforms and will continue to expand its relations with other countries. China always regulates its relations with other countries, and I think that the development of China is a huge contribution into the development of global economy. Thank you. We are nearing the end of the plenary session. Vladimir Vladimirovich, we've been talking for approximately 3 hours about the way the Far East will look in the future. What is the most important factor for its development? Growth of the population growth. We have to create conditions, which we've been talking about today, in order to increase the birth rates and in order to attract young people to live and work in this region with such prospective future. And the last question I would like to address to all the participants of the discussion: what are the main challenges that our countries are facing today, and what are the potential response that countries may have? Shall we begin with Mr. Ibrahim, please?
The most senior in office is President Putin, out of respect.
Vladimir Vladimirovich.
Спасибо.
Well, thank you. Well, the question is about the future, right? As to Russia, we have to provide for the development of the economy on the domestic technological foundation and basis, with highly qualified and motivated, potentially motivated workers in the country. As to the development of the global south, we have to provide the world or global leadership in the economy, in the development of the economy, especially as far as the rates of growth are concerned. So the rate of growth in our country, this is what we are aiming at, and this is what we are going to achieve. The same question goes to you.
The economy. But how we view the economy is not unbridled capitalism of the past. It has to be a more humanistic approach towards development. which means, of course, economic growth, more investments, more trade, but at the same time, more compassionate, more care towards the welfare of people. Poverty, I think the Vice President has mentioned. Housing, the President Putin has mentioned. I think these are issues that have been largely ignored. So the experience in some countries in the West with phenomenal growth, but abject poverty and poor housing conditions, low quality education is not our option. So which means having a growth that is sustainable means that protecting the environment, having good housing, quality education, and also anticipating fast enough the pace of change in a post-normal times, that is a new direction in terms of training of our young in digitalization, in AI, with values which is in deficit in the world today. I strongly believe that we want to progress as a country, as a nation. We cannot ignore humanity, values, and ethics. It is a deficit in this world. That is why you see so many calamities, gross injustice, and racism, even fanaticism, atrocities committed in the name of religion, because we do progress what dehumanize ourselves. That is why I started by referring to a lot of great literary works of Russian figures, because they always emphasize issues of ethics, moral, and humanitarian ideals. Now, with that, I think we should learn from one another, and we should not learn the excesses of the past, particularly when it comes to gross injustice and continuing to grow but marginalize the society. Thank you.
Спасибо. Господин Джен, вам тот же самый вопрос, какие главные вызовы?
Mr. Jin, what are the challenges that our countries are facing nowadays? I'd like to say that the president of the country, Xi Jinping, pointed out that the society of common future for humanity is one of the most important challenges for the countries of the world, for the global population. We're all on different stages of development and have different issues of contention, but we need to build a society for common future. Thank you. Well, as far as I understand that we are rounding up our discussion, I would like to extend my gratitude to the guests of this discussion for the participation in this discussion and the attention to what is happening both in Russia and in the Far East. And I would like to address the auditorium. There are people here who work in the sphere of the economy or representatives of state enterprises. I'd like to say that I'm quite sure that entrepreneurship is above all creation of wealth and prosperity. And if we address it that way, we will be able to achieve all the tasks that we are setting before us. I'd like to thank you for participating in these activities and events, and I hope that we realize our plans in the future. Thank you. And on my side, I would like to quote you this time. So the priority for the 21st century is the Far East. Yes, I'd like to thank our moderator. Thank you for the wonderful job you did. Thank you.